Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and GameFound over the next week. And if you're new to the channel, we do this every week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you want to stay up to date, this is the place to be. But before we get started, I do like to go over some new announcements and discoveries that I think you might find interesting. And I only really have one thing to point out, and that's that there's going to be a second printing for the game Foundations of Rome. This is going to include everything from the original campaign, including the big box, but it's also going to be adding a new expansion where you're going to be able to control the borders of Rome as well. And this does say Kickstarter on this preview page, but this is a BackerKit preview page, so I'm pretty sure this one's going to be going to BackerKit. It looks like a lot of campaigns are transferring over to that platform. I'm really interested to see how that works out, but if you want to get notified as soon as that one gets launched, you can go ahead and sign up on their preview page now. And also, I do these videos every week, but if you want to see a little bit further into the future, Alex over at Board Game Co puts out a video at the end of each month going over the following month and letting you know of all the campaigns that we know about at that time. And he just put out his video for July last week, so if you want to check that out, I'll have a link to that in the description below. But with all that out of the way, let's check out the campaigns. And the first campaign we have launches on July 11th, and this one's called Isle of Trains All Aboard, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 45 minutes to play. And this is an engine building train game that uses primarily just cards in order to play the game, and this is a re-implementation of the game Isle of Trains. This is going to be a complete rework on the game. There's going to be a brand new rulebook, brand new artwork, and additional content added to the game as well that I think will improve the game quite a bit. But basically this is a competitive game where players are going to be setting up a main board which is going to consist of 7 different locations, and these different locations are essentially just different objective cards that players can try to complete throughout the game. And then there's going to be 6 destination cards put out as well, and players can deliver different types of passengers to these locations in order to gain the bonuses there. And each player starts the game with their own train engine card, which they'll just put on the table in front of them. And then every player is going to draw 5 more cards from the shared deck, as well as draw 2 random passengers from the draw bag. 3 cards will also be revealed from the shared deck face up, and this will act as the shared market. But on a player's turn, there's a few different actions that you can choose from, and the first one is the take action, and this just allows you to take one of those cards from the shared market, or instead you could take a card from the top of the deck, or if you don't need another card, you can instead choose to draw a passenger from the draw bag. And then there's the build action, which allows you to play one of the cards from your hand, but in order to do that, you're going to have to pay the cost associated with it, which is going to tell you how many cards from your hand you need to discard in order to play that card. And there's a couple types of cards that you can play. There's the locomotive cards, which will get added to your train, and these can have different capacities for passengers or different types of resources. And then there are the building cards, and when you build those, you'll just be putting those out in front of you, and those will give you a special ability or some sort of benefit for the rest of the game. But the cool thing about these cards is that they're all going to be categorized into different types, and some cards within each type will be better than others, but they'll also be more expensive, so they'll be more difficult to purchase right off the bat. But if you've already built a card of that type, you can upgrade it to the better one just by paying the difference between the 2 cards. And another action you can do is the load action, and this is going to allow you to load one of your passengers into any train car that is currently out on the table. And the catch here is that you can load it into your own car, but you don't get any benefit for that immediately. But if you do load passengers into an opponent's car, you will get a benefit or some sort of bonus associated with that. But there are pros and cons to doing this, because the final action that you can perform is the deliver action, and this will allow you to deliver different passengers or resources in order to complete different objectives or get special bonuses. So you might want to be careful with the opportunities that you're giving to the other players. And an important thing to note when you perform this action is that you can deliver as many resources or passengers as you like to a single location. So you might want to gather up a few tokens before you perform this action. When you deliver passengers, they're going to go onto those destination cards, and you're always going to put them on the spaces from left to right, and there's only 3 spaces on each card before it gets filled. But when you do that, you're going to gain the benefit for each space that you were able to put a passenger on. But instead of taking passengers, you can choose to take one of the location cards from the center of the board, and you can only ever have one of these in your possession unfulfilled at a time, so you won't be able to take another one until you fulfill the requirements of that card, and that's going to require you to have a certain amount of resources of some different types in order to complete it. And these cards are going to be the main way that you get victory points throughout the game, but some of the building and locomotive cards can also give you victory points as well. And once a certain amount of those location and destination cards are completed, that's going to trigger the end of the game, and whoever gets the most victory points wins the game. And this one's going to be my personal pick of the week. I think this game provides quite a lot in a small package and with a small rules overhead, and I really like the additions that they added to the game from the original with the way that the passengers work. And another reason that I made this one my pick of the week is that I can already see it's going to be offered at a very reasonable price point, and they do have the full rule set on their campaign. And since this is a reimplementation of a pre-existing game, you may have already played it, or if you haven't, it is out there available for you to try. And they do also have a tabletop simulator version of the game if you want to go ahead and try it digitally, and I'm sure they'll have a link to that on their campaign, but we also have a link to it on our Discord as well if you want to check out our Discord in the description below. And the next campaign we have, also launching on July 11th, is called Deep Sky Ballad, and this one is a tabletop role-playing game that's going to have a space western setting. And in this game there was a massive catastrophe that nearly wiped out all of mankind, but there were a few different groups of survivors that formed into their own small isolated factions. But even though a lot of humanity was lost, a lot of the technology that we had did manage to survive, and your party is going to be one of these factions using the technology that was left over in order to explore space, gather and share limited resources on your spaceship, engage in different challenges and battles, and potentially find a new place to call your home. But the Western theme is also going to be incorporated into the mechanisms as well, because this game uses a blackjack system to allow players to perform different actions throughout the game. And if you're interested in this one, you'll definitely want to follow along so that you get an additional adventure added to your game, and I have links to this campaign and all the others in the description below. And the next campaign we have launching on July 12th is called Hijacked, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 20 to 60 minutes to play. And this is actually a campaign that I thought was launching last week, so I already covered this one, so I'll just go ahead and roll that footage for you now. And this is a cooperative hostage negotiation game where players are trying to evacuate passengers from a grounded aircraft, and you're trying to do this all before the team of police invades the plane using force. And this game is going to be played over a series of rounds, and players are going to be using dice worker placement in order to perform various actions on their turn. And players will be using these different actions in order to do different things like build trust with the hijackers, earn demand points that they can spend to make different demands, and then negotiate with the hijackers to try and get as many passengers off the aircraft as safely as possible. This is another one that I wasn't able to find too much information on, but if you like worker placement and you like the theme, definitely check this one out, and I have links in the description below. And launching on the 12th we have Moon, and this plays 1 to 5 players and takes about 45 to 90 minutes to play. And this is the third in a series of games coming from Sinister Fish Games that each share about the same game weight, components, and art style, but they all play quite a bit differently from each other, with the other two being Villagers and Streets. I don't think these are going to be offered in the campaign, but I think they will be offered in the backer kit Pledge Manager after the campaign. And both the previous games have been quite a hit. I've played both of them and I think they're both excellent games, so it's no surprise that this one is also our Discord pick of the week. But this game is going to be primarily focused on drafting and hand management as well as resource management, and this is a game that plays over 3 different rounds, and these rounds are representing different eras. And each round is going to start by dealing out structure cards to each of the players, and the structure cards can do a few different things like grant you a special ability, help you generate more resources of a few different types, give you some endgame victory points, and also allow you to collect different flags, which I will get back to in a moment. Players will also gain an expedition card, which will grant them a more powerful, unique special ability. And the first phase after the round starts is the production phase, where any of the cards that you've played out already that produce some sort of resource will produce those resources. Then players will take turns performing different actions, and there's just a couple actions that you can perform. You can either discard one of the cards in your hand in order to gain the resources outlined on that card, or instead you can construct cards into your tableau. And in order to do that, you're going to have to fulfill the requirements of the card, which might require you to pay different resources or have a certain amount of flags owned of a certain type. But once per turn, you can also park a rover meeple in order to ignore one of those requirements. And there's a few shared objectives that players are going to be trying to work towards in order to gain victory points throughout the game. And after you've completed your turn, you're going to check if you fulfilled any of those objectives and score those victory points. And this continues until the end of the round. And the neat thing about this game is at the end of the round, you actually pass all your remaining cards as well as your special ability to the next player beside you. So you'll want to keep in mind which cards you're keeping in your hand and which ones you're using, because any that you don't use will be available to that player. And then players also gain victory points at the end of each round based on which players have the majority of each flag type. And then the victory point tokens get replenished for the next round, and then the rounds continue like this until 3 eras are completed, and the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. And it looks like this is going to be the first board game that we get to see launching on Backer Kit, so if you're interested in this campaign, or if you're just interested to see how Backer Kit's going to look, you can go ahead and sign up for this one, and I have links in the description below. Also launching on the 12th, we have Mantle of the Keeper, and this plays 2 to 4 players. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes to play, and this is a card-driven skirmish game where players can either go head-to-head 1v1 or you can go against each other in teams. Players will be able to choose from one of 6 different characters, each with some different sets of abilities and stats, and they also each come with their own unique deck of cards, and players will be using those cards to perform their various actions, but they're going to have their character deployed out on a main board along with all the other players. And the game plays over a series of rounds where at the start of the round players are going to gain a fixed income and also draw a card. And then players are going to be taking turns performing 2 actions, and there's only 2 actions you can perform, but you can choose to do the same one twice if you want, and those actions are to either draw another card or to play one of the cards that you already have in your hand. It's going to allow you to do different attacks or movements, as well as some other abilities that might come in handy. And in addition to these 2 actions, players also get a free movement action which they can perform at any time on their turn, so you can choose to do that before, after, or even between your 2 other actions. And when you do attack another player, they'll be able to defend with one of their defense cards, and if they are able to get a higher defense value, then they've successfully defended themselves from your attack, and they'll get reparations for that in the form of additional income. And like I said, your characters are upgradable, so you're going to be spending that income in order to upgrade your character and try to get yourself a bit of an advantage against your opponents. And if you're able to defeat the other opponents, then you or your team wins the game. Also launching on the 12th, we have Taverns and Dragons, and this plays 2 to 5 players and takes about 40 to 60 minutes to play, and this is actually a campaign that I did cover in the past. This one previously launched on GameFound, but they decided to pull that one down, and they're going to be relaunching this one this week on Kickstarter. And I think I did a pretty good job of covering this one when it originally launched, so I'll just go ahead and re-roll that footage for you now. And this is a game that uses one of my favorite mechanisms, which is dice worker placement, and then it also combines that with worker movement. In this game, players are tavern owners in a mythical world, and players are going to be competing over 7 rounds using dice worker placement to try and earn the most prestige points in order to host the King's Banquet. This one looks like it's going to have some really nice artwork, and I do mention that this is intended to be a gateway game, so it will be pretty easy to learn and teach, but it does look like it has quite a bit of moving parts, so I think it'll offer a lot of depth of decision for those of us looking for some meat in our games. Players are going to be managing their options over 2 different boards. There's the main game board, and then there's their individual tavern boards. And each round, players are going to simultaneously roll 5 dice, and then take turns placing 1 die at a time wherever they want across these 2 boards. The main board has a few different dice placement locations around the perimeter where players can place their dice, and you can do different things like earn gold at the bank based on your die value placed there relative to the other players at the end of the round, or you can do other things like gain energy or learn new recipes. The center of the board also has places for location tiles that can change throughout the game, and then these circles that go all around the board represent areas that your meeples can visit, because each player will also have a meeple on this board that they'll be moving throughout the different locations and trying to take the specific actions there. And this is where the main board is tightly coupled with your tavern board, because players can also place a die on their individual tavern board in order to move their meeple around the main board and visit the different locations. And you can also place dice to collect ingredients or perform the location-specific ability at whatever location you're currently visiting. One of those actions might be to hunt a dragon, which can get you some really nice rewards, but it does come at a cost because this enters you into a little bit of a push your luck minigame where you're going to be using these individual dragon boards to try and fight against the dragon and hopefully not get burned. At any time on your turn, players can also hire a hero by paying the cost on the hero card and then gaining that card and the special ability that comes along with it. And of course, ingredients are used to complete different recipes, which will get you some really nice victory points. And at the end of 7 rounds, players will be tallying up their victory points by summing up the points from their recipes, the heroes that they've collected, defeated dragons, and the coins that they have remaining at the end of the game. The player with the most points wins the game. Also launching on July 12th, we have Leviathan Wilds, and this plays 2 to 4 players and takes about 45 to 75 minutes to play, and this is a cooperative game that takes place in a world with friendly colossal beings, but unfortunately these beings are being corrupted, which is making them very aggressive, and it's up to you and your team in order to free them. And the game's going to offer a whole bunch of different Leviathans provided in a spiral booklet, and there's going to be about 20 different Leviathans for players to go up against, each of them playing very different from each other, offering a different difficulty, coming in different shapes and sizes, and also coming with their own unique Leviathan deck. And players are going to be climbing and trying to reach different areas of the Leviathan to try and destroy the crystals that are corrupting them. But the Leviathan will retaliate at the end of each round, potentially damaging players or knocking them down to a lower area on the board. And the more that you climb around on them, the more that they will get agitated, so their threat level will be increasing throughout the game, making the retaliations even more deadly. And the first thing that happens each round is that you're going to be revealing the next card in the Leviathan deck. And each card has a few different actions on it that correspond to different threat levels throughout the game, and the action that matches the Leviathan's current threat level is the one that will get activated at the end of the round. And with that information, the players will know how the Leviathan will retaliate at the end of the round, giving the players some time to adjust their positioning or prepare for that incoming retaliation. Players will then take turns using cards in their hand, and the cards that they have will have an action point value as well as a special ability, and these are dual use cards, and you'll be able to choose which of those that you want to use. But at this point in the game, you're going to be using them for their action points, and you'll be spending those action points to perform different movements like climbing, descending, or jumping to different areas on the board. Or you can also use those action points to rest, which will refresh your deck of cards, putting your discarded cards back into your hand, because your cards also kind of act like your endurance, and if you ever run out of cards, you're going to be losing grip on the Leviathan and fall into a lower area of the board. But the catch here is that you can't rest wherever you want. You have to be at a spot where it's safe to rest, so you're going to have to make sure you have enough cards to get there before you're able to take that action. But the other actions you can perform are to heal some of your wounds, damage the crystals, or gather cubes in order to level up your character. But for any of the cards that you're not using for its action points, you can instead use its special ability, and you can do this at any point on any player's turn, and you can even use that card to help other players. I really like this because it adds more player interaction and encourages players to work together to get the most out of their actions. But of course, also doing this is going to make you run out of cards quicker, so you really want to be careful when you're using your cards. After all the players have played all the cards that they want, you're going to draw back up to a hand size of 5 cards, and then you can also level up your character by spending the cubes that you've collected so far. And then at the very end of the round, that retaliation card that we drew at the start of the round is going to get activated and affect any characters that get caught in the way. And then the rounds continue like this until either the players have destroyed all the crystals, freeing the Leviathan from its corruption, or if a player gets so exhausted that they can no longer go on, then that's going to trigger the last round of the game, and players will have that final round in order to try and save the Leviathan. And there's a really neat aspect in this game that causes players to get exhausted that I haven't talked about yet, and that is the way that the health track and the exhaustion track work together, because they're actually the same track. This track will actually have 2 cubes on it. One represents your health and one represents your exhaustion. And as you lose health, you're going to be moving that token over to the right, but then as you gain exhaustion, you're going to be moving the exhaustion token to the left. And if those 2 tokens ever overlap on each other, then that player is going to trigger the final round of the game. And as always, you can find links to this and all the other campaigns in the description below. And this next campaign, also launching on July 12th, is actually going to be offering 2 different games. And the first game that this one is offering is called Hanafuda Koi Koi. And this is actually a traditional Japanese card game, but this newer version is going to be featuring art from Vincent Dutrait, who is quite a renowned artist in the board game space. And to play this game, you have essentially a specialized deck of cards that has 12 different suits, with each suit representing a different month of the year, and there's going to be 4 cards within each suit. And you'll be shuffling these up, dealing 8 cards face up to the center of the table, and then dealing 8 cards to each player. And this is a game that plays over a series of rounds where on a round you're trying to create a set of cards in order to score victory points, and there's a whole bunch of different sets that you can try to achieve. You can either try to match different things like the suits of the cards, or different icons like the scrolls, animals, or moons, or other identifiers that are on the different cards. And in order to do that, players are going to be taking turns, and on your turn you're going to be choosing a card from your hand matching one of the suits that is out on the table, and then you can take both of those and place them in front of you. Or if there's no good options for you, you can instead take one of your cards and add it to the center of the table, and then draw a new card from the deck. And if you are able to match that new card to one of the cards in the center of the table, then you can take those 2 cards, just like you could if you did have a match previously. But if it doesn't match, then that card also goes to the center, and you don't gain any benefit in that turn. This is going to continue until a player completes a set, and they can choose to either call an immediate end to the round and score those points, or they can let the other players know that they have completed a set and that they're trying to complete another set in order to score more victory points. But the catch here is if you do choose to go that route, if any other player is able to complete a set before you complete complete your second set, then they're going to score double points. And the player with the highest score after 12 rounds wins the game. The second game that this campaign's offering is called 100 Torii, and this is a garden building tile placement game that plays over a series of rounds. Each round's going to play over 4 phases, and each player starts with 2 tiles in their hand. And this is a game that has a whole bunch of different characters that each have their own special ability, and each one of those is available to every player in the game. And on your turn, you'll be able to pay one of those characters in order to use their special ability. And the different abilities they can grant you are to draw an additional tile, play an additional tile, play a tile on top of another tile, ignore icons on a chosen tile, or move the samurai meeple onto a certain tile in order to block that tile as a potential path. Because what players are trying to do is to create different paths based on different icons and gain tokens matching those icons and scoring victory points. And the way that this works is that after you've paid to use any of those special abilities I just mentioned, then you can place a tile out on the board. And when you place that tile, you're going to be choosing one of those icons and then finding the closest tile with that matching icon. And then you're going to be following the shortest path between those 2 tiles, but tiles can also have different colored gates on them. And if you happen to pass through gates on the path between those 2 tiles, then you're going to be gaining additional tokens. And that's where those abilities really come into play, so you can manipulate the board and try to allow yourself to create the longest path possible that goes through the most gates, getting you the most tokens that can then be converted into victory points later. Because there's going to be a whole bunch of different achievements that you're trying to complete by collecting different sets of resources, and if you're able to do that, then you're going to gain that achievement and the victory points associated with it. After all players have had a turn, you're going to replenish your hand back up to 2 tiles and continue on to the next round. And this campaign is going to be offering the Diverging Paths expansion to the game, which is going to add 2 new character abilities, as well as 4 unique locations that you can play with the base game, and you can choose to incorporate as many or as few of those locations as you like. Each location is going to have its own self-contained set of rules and components that will change the way that the game plays and offer you more variability from game to game. And the next campaign we have also launching on the 12th is called Hellguard, Curse of Cana, and this one is also a tabletop role-playing game, but I couldn't find too much information on this. But what it says on the campaign page here is that this is an infernal fantasy, complete with 5 single night adventures. So if you're into RPGs, this looks like a really great option if you're just looking for a one and done scenario that you can play in a single night, especially if you're playing with people that you may not be able to play a consistent campaign with, whether you see them infrequently or if they're not normally into RPGs. And the next campaign is launching on the 13th, and this one's called Planting Evidence, the card game. And this one plays 2 to 4 players. It takes about 40 to 80 minutes to play. And this is actually a campaign that I did just cover in a previous week, but there's always a few campaigns that do get shifted around a little bit, and it didn't end up launching, so it's going to be launching this week. So check that out in the description below if you want to know more, and I'll roll that footage now. And in this game, players are criminals, but one of them is going to get caught, and players are trying to frame the other players while trying to gather as much evidence for their own alibis so that they are the ones that go free. Each player in this game starts with a hand of 11 cards, and then each turn you're going to be able to choose whether to draw a card from the top of the shared deck or from the top of the face-up discard pile. And the goal of this game is to try and complete different sets of cards, either of weapons, fingerprints, DNA, or license plate profiles, in order to get rid of your cards as fast as possible, because you'll want to be the first to either plant those cards on opponent players as incriminating evidence, or you'll want to place those cards in your own tableau as evidence of your alibi. At the end of your turn, you'll also be able to discard a card for free, and then the round ends when a single player has gotten rid of all their cards. And once again, you do want to be the first player to do this, because any cards that are left in your hand at the end of a turn count against you. Players calculate their scores by adding up the evidence against them and then subtracting their alibis, and then rounds continue until a player hits 300 points, and then that player is convicted, loses the game, and goes straight to jail. Also launching on the 13th, we have Dead Throne, World of Veles, and this plays 1 to 7 players and takes about 60 to 120 minutes to play. And this is a sort of sandbox game where you can create your own scenarios, but there's also going to be a lot provided with the game as well. The game comes with large modular map tiles, multiple paths to victory depending on the scenario and characters that you're playing as. The game can be played solo, cooperatively, or competitively, and on a turn you're essentially doing 2 things. The first thing is that you can optionally move your character to an adjacent tile. And then the second thing is that you can interact with anything that you see on that tile. So there could be different buildings or scenery, and if you interact with that, you could discover different enemies, items, challenges, or even find a market where you can upgrade and buy new gear. And like I said, this is a sandbox game that offers a lot of flexibility, so some of this does require players to use their imagination, but you can combine different items together to create new items and create stories and use those how you see fit to complete the different challenges and objectives. And if you're able to complete the objectives for the scenario that you're playing, then you win the game. And the next campaign we have, also launching on the 13th, is called Temple of Horrors, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 60 to 90 minutes to play. And this is a dungeon crawler that can be played as a single one-shot game or as a full campaign, and this offers cooperative and competitive modes of play. And in this game, you're essentially going to be choosing an adventure from the Book of Adventures, and it's going to offer you over 100 different scenarios to choose from, ranging over 5 different difficulties. And it's going to instruct you how to set up the board and your objectives for that scenario, and then players are going to be choosing a hero, exploring a dungeon, placing tiles down to create that dungeon, preferably creating chains of tiles of matching color, because if players are able to do that, they'll unlock some special areas that will grant them some bonuses and benefits. But the game also has a wall system that will affect your accessibility to the tiles around you as well as your line of sight. And each of the characters will have an initiative value, and players will be taking turns according to their initiative. And on a player's turn, they'll be able to perform different actions in order to move, activate rooms or items in the different rooms, use one of their powers, or attack a monster in their vicinity. But performing these different actions does create more noise, and the more noise you make, the more creatures will wake up and cause more encounters for you to deal with. And a neat thing about how this works is that when you alert too many monsters, that can actually trigger more powerful monsters to appear. And there's also going to be some even more powerful boss monsters that will appear in different areas, most likely guarding key artifacts or key areas that players are going to need access to. Combat in this game uses characters' abilities and powers, but then you're also going to be using a combat board in order to roll cubes, and depending on the results, you can inflict damage points and gain dodge points that you can spend in order to avoid attacks from the different monsters. And if all the players are able to complete the objectives, then they win the game. And those are all the campaigns I have for you this week, but don't leave yet because we have a few awesome giveaways to announce. And these are the easiest giveaways to enter ever. All you have to do is leave a comment down below. You don't have to like, you don't have to subscribe, but I do appreciate it and it does help this channel grow. So you should definitely do that too, because it'll help us have more giveaways in the future. And the first giveaway is for Snapship Tactics. And this is a really interesting tactical combat board game that can be played both competitively, cooperatively, or even solo. But the thing that makes this one so interesting is that players are going to be starting with a chassis of a ship, as well as a chassis card associated with it that's going to tell you how many points that you can spend in order to add other components to that chassis. But each component that you add to that chassis also comes with its own card that's going to modify the statistics of your ship in various ways. This can make you more maneuverable, give you stronger attack power or defense, or even just give you access to additional abilities that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And the game plays over a series of rounds where your first action is to always move your ship, and then you're going to be allocating power to the different areas of your ship in order to perform additional actions. But the fun doesn't stop there, because there's also going to be different terrain that players can encounter out in space, as well as different hazards that could potentially get in the way, but if used appropriately, they can actually be used to your advantage. This giveaway is going to be for the starter pledge, which comes with the starter box and all daily unlocks. And under this giveaway, just leave a comment down below with the hashtag snap and let us know what was the latest thing in your life that you built. For myself, it's still a work in progress, but I have been trying to put together a board game table. I'm like 90% there. I've already used it a bunch of times and it works awesome. It just lacks a little bit of polish and cup holders. And I've actually been really in a mood to try and finish it, but I've just been lacking so much time this year that some things fall off. A lot of things fall off. And the next giveaway we have is a pledge for Mini Express. And this is a train game where players will be both building tracks in order to gain influence in the different railway companies, but then also buying stocks in those railway companies. But the catch here is that you're spending your influence in order to buy those stocks. And also the value of the stock is the amount of stocks you've bought multiplied by your influence. So there is a bit of an optimization puzzle there where you don't want to spend all your influence and have those stocks worth a meager amount. And this campaign is also introducing 2 new expansions, each with 2 new maps, one being in Taiwan, the United Kingdom, Japan, and Spain. And they all bring something new to the table, each being designed by different designers, really changing up the way that the game plays and offering a lot of variety for players to choose from. And this giveaway is going to be for a pledge for the full express ticket, and this is going to get you the core game plus all the map packs in their collector's edition and all unlocked stretch goals. And under this giveaway, just leave a comment down below with the hashtag Express and let us know the last time that you've been on a train, if you've ever been on a train. For myself, I'm going to bend the rules here a little bit because on my way back from Muskoka a couple of weekends ago, I actually stopped at a little restaurant called Weber's. If you're ever up in the Muskoka area, I definitely recommend checking it out because they have a really interesting way that they prepare your orders. But then there isn't really a single restaurant. Instead, there's just a whole bunch of different rail cars and outdoor seating, and you can eat either outside or inside one of those rail cars. And of course, I chose the rail car because I always choose fun. And the last giveaway we have is for a copy of Bagh Chal. And this is a traditional game to Nepal, and it plays very similar to checkers, except for it's an asymmetric game. So one player is going to be playing as 4 different tigers, and then one player is going to be playing as 20 goats. And the game starts with the tigers out on the board, but then the other player is going to be putting goats out on the board one by one, and the tiger player is going to be trying to jump over those goats in order to secure them, while the goat player is actually trying to get those tigers into a position where they aren't able to make any movements. And if you're interested in a game that just works well for traveling or camping or taking with you basically anywhere, this is a really great option because this is a pocket-sized game with wooden components and a cloth board, which makes it very versatile and easy to play in any situation. And the whole premise of this campaign is that the creators just want to create more awareness for this game and want it to continue to last over the generations and not get forgotten, and allow more people throughout the world to experience and enjoy the game that it offers. And because of that, this is just a pay what you want campaign. So if the game sounds interesting to you, or if you just like the effort being done here, definitely go ahead and check this campaign out. I'll have a link to this in the description below, and show them some support, paying whatever you think this is worth to you, or whatever amount that you feel comfortable supporting them with. And under this giveaway, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. All you have to do is check out the link to our Discord in the description below. Check out the giveaways channel, and I'll have a post there where you can just go ahead and click this emoji underneath the post. Clicking that will automatically enter you in the giveaway, and I have this set up so that 3 winners will be drawn at the end of the week, and I'll reach out to each of you and let you know that you won yourself a copy of Bagh Chal. And now let's go ahead and draw the winner for last week's giveaway, and this was for a pledge for Umbrella Academy, the board game. And to draw a winner, I use this fancy application here. All these extra names down here are bonus entries for my Patreon subscribers. If you like this sort of content and you want to help out the channel and make all these efforts just a little bit more sustainable for me, I truly do appreciate it, and you can find links to the Patreon in the description below. But let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. Oops. Let's try that again. Draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is Liopic, and this is one of our Patreon subscribers, so I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a pledge for Umbrella Academy. And those are all the campaigns I have for you this week. And this is another week where I'm losing a day, so I have to film this early. This has been happening a lot lately. It's been really stressful on me, honestly. But because I'm filming this on a Wednesday, I might miss out on a campaign or two, because it's not uncommon that I find out about new campaigns on the Thursday or the Friday. So feel free to check out the Discord in the description below, because that always has the most up-to-date information. And if I find anything new, there will be a channel added for that campaign on the Discord under the Launching This Week category. But that's all I have this week, so as always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.